Wolves and Newcastle have advanced talks today over a deal for Jorgen Strand Larsen. Now, in this video, we're going to be speaking about the deal itself, about my personal opinions on the overall deal for both clubs, not just Wolverhampton Wanderers, and what I think this deal could mean for Wolves as well. So let's get straight into this one. As you can see here, Liam Keane reported that Wolves are facing a real fight to keep Jorgen Strand Larsen, as Newcastle are now pushing to sign the striker in a deal worth over £60 million. Now, you'd imagine it'll probably be 60 with £5 million add-ons. You'd imagine that's in the ballpark that Newcastle are operating in for Jorgen Strand Larsen and probably want to get a deal done around that price. Now, I think it's very, very interesting given the fact that after a few hours, it says here by Nathan Judah, also obviously, of course, at the Express and Star with Liam Keane, that Wolves and Newcastle are around £5 million apart in valuations of Jorgen Strand Larsen. Now, this is very, very interesting as a deal. Now, of course, it's very important that we first of all speak about what it could mean for Wolverhampton Wanderers. Now, obviously, the window ends on the 1st of September, so it leaves Wolves, as at the time of recording, on the 21st of August at 10:15. It essentially leaves Wolves in a very, very sticky situation. They've got 11 days to replace a 14-goal Premier League striker, given the fact that he's not actually gone yet. If he was to go in the next 24 to 48 hours, you're looking at 9 days, really, by the time the deal probably gets somewhat finalised, to get a 14-goal Premier League striker through the door. Now, don't get me wrong, they absolutely could do that, and it is very, very possible that a player comes in that's very experienced, or they go for the likes of someone who's already in the league, maybe the likes of Rodrigo Muniz, for example, but I just don't see why he would leave Fulham. Now, as I've said, replacing those 14 goals is very, very difficult to do, and the idea that Wolves can replace them as quickly as that when they've already got a lot of movement in that forward line and a lot of outgoings throughout the door this summer. Obviously, they've lost very, very key players who've had a massive share in Wolves' goals last season in terms of Ryan Aït-Nouri, Matheus Cunha, even the likes of Pablo Sarabia, and of course, Hwang Hee-chan's potentially on his way out. Fabio Silva is still potentially on his way out as well. And there's been so many players leaving, of course, Gonzalo Guedes, just to name a few. Nelson Semedo, for example. Now, there's a lot of players that have gone, and that is the frustration from this window. And realistically, the quality overall isn't as, the players that have come in hasn't been unbelievably skyrocketingly high, really. The only one you could say is probably Krejci for me and John Arias. Now, Arias, again, it's going to take a while for him to adapt to the league. I think the rest of them are a relatively big risk. I like Fer Lopez a hell of a lot, as I've said in previous videos. But Krejci, for me, if he's the one that comes in, as that left-sided centre-back, or maybe to play in the middle with Agbadou moving out to the right and then Totti to the left of him. That's the only real one where I think is a very, very good quality signing and an improvement on the current squad in that position. Now, I think it is very, very interesting because Jorgen Strand Larsen, as I've said, is a 14-goal Premier League striker from last season. Was very, very crucial towards the end of the season. Ultimately, when you look at the goals, the teams that he scored those goals against, he should be scoring against a lot of them. And Wolves should be beating a lot of them, of course. The Ipswich game, you think of, he had a massive part in the Sarabia goal. And ultimately, he scored the other goal. He scored against Southampton again on the road. It just, a lot of big goals in games that, ultimately Wolves should have been winning. Obviously, there are exceptions to that, like, for example, Tottenham away and stuff like that. But, as I've said, Larsen scored in games that Wolves should have been winning anyway. So, are those stats a bit fake? Not for me, personally. I think Strand Larsen's brilliant. Everyone knows my opinion on Jorgen Strand Larsen. I love traditional number 9s. I love Jorgen Strand Larsen the way he plays. But, equally, the fee is very, very interesting. So, we're going to speak about that now. Now, the reaction to Jorgen Strand Larsen has been very, very mixed. I mean, this is a very interesting one for me. Our owners are such, Newcastle are gagging for a striker. We need to get 75 to 80 million pounds. This is just completely unrealistic, isn't it, if we're being completely honest. I like Jorgen Strand Larsen a lot, as I have said numerous times across this channel for, pretty much the whole of last season as well. But no one's paying 75 to 80 million pounds for Jorgen Strand Larsen. They're just not. He's technically limited. He's not the quickest or the most nimble player. He's not the most, outrageously good footballer to watch. Ultimately, he's very effective. And arguably, I'd actually argue he's not an unbelievable finisher, which sounds crazy. But he did miss a hell of a lot of chances last season and clear-cut chances at that, and probably should have ended the season with more goals to his tally, to be honest. So, ultimately, I think the idea that Wolves could get more money because Newcastle are in desperate need for a striker is pretty lazy and, quite frankly, a bit ludicrous, to be honest. Now, would Wolves accept this and should Wolves accept this are two very separate things. Should Wolves accept it? Potentially, because it is a big fee. But I just don't, for me, I think it's a no-go. I don't see how Wolves can afford to lose all of these players and then lose the only proven goal scorer at Premier League level in their side. It just makes absolutely zero sense to me whatsoever. Obviously, Hwang Hee-chan is another one that you could potentially argue has been a proven goal scorer at Premier League level, but not for me personally. He's just not someone that I think is good enough to lead the line for Wolves anymore. Now, will Wolves accept this? This is where it gets very interesting. Now, of course, there's a massive issue with the owners, massively, of course. Jeff Shee, the chairman, the owners in Fosun, they are massively under criticism, and rightly so, in my opinion, for the majority of things that have gone on this summer and, previously as well. Would they accept this? Yes. Let's be completely honest. If they get 65 to 70 million pounds, 65 with 5 million add-ons for Jorgen Strand Larsen, there is absolutely zero world, in my personal opinion, that Fosun and Jeff Shee do not say that's a no-brainer of a deal. We've basically, signed him for 25 million, or I think it's 25 million euros actually, but 25 million anyway, and we've managed to get, nearly triple that in 1 year. Of course, they're going to look at that as a really big opportunity to be like, do you know what? Brilliant business, incredible business. But Wolves cannot afford too much more movement in this squad in terms of outgoings. They need incomings desperately, and especially in that forward line now, if Fabio Silva and Hwang go. The Hwang deal, for me, is a very, very interesting one and a weird one anyway, because I just don't see how a loan benefits not only Palace, but also how it benefits Wolves whatsoever. I think a sale somewhat would benefit Wolves, but again, they're in a very tough situation with Fabio Silva looking likely to leave, and Sasa Kalajic having 3 ACLs in the last 5 years and being very unlucky and just seemingly can't really stay fit. So hopefully he could stay fit, but again, I don't think he's a Premier League leading number 9 that's particularly unbelievable and is going to keep Wolves in the Premier League. I just don't see that happening. So, as I've said, the question, if Wolves should sell him and if Wolves would sell him, are two different things. And I'm very much of the opinion that they shouldn't sell him, but if the money comes in and the offer's on the table, I do think the owners and Jeff Shee would say, yeah, we can't not take that personally. And the final point that I do want to touch on, as much as I dislike Matheus Cunha, I do think this is an absolutely ludicrous tweet that I've seen doing the rounds this evening. And obviously Wolves Twitter is a very, not a special place, but it's a very intriguing place to be, let's just say. Now, as you can see here, Luke has said, I think people are going to soon realise Cunha getting as many goals as he did was largely due to Larsen. This is where concept scouting pulls the shotgun out and absolutely kills him. As you can see here, Matheus Cunha's last 8 goals for Wolves, an Aït-Nouri cross, Larsen not on the pitch, Larsen not involved, Larsen not on the pitch, 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 and obviously the direct goal from a corner against Manchester United. This is absolutely ludicrous to me, in my personal opinion. And then Luke doubles down on it and proceeds to say how not to analyse goals 101 here. Considering he's not on the pitch, fair enough. But equally, again, I do think that it's been overplayed a little bit, and I do think Strand Larsen's one of those players that he's never created the most chances, and my issue with Strand Larsen has been all pre-season, and was last season as well. Part of the reason I did think he could have scored more is that he doesn't create anything for himself. He almost creates nothing for himself, in fact. I think he's one of these players that, his movement's great, and when players create for him, facilitate for him, as we've seen with Marshall Monetzi last season, or we've seen with Matheus Cunha last season, even Ryan Aït-Nouri, and potentially, the likes of Sarabia and stuff coming off the bench, I think we've seen that he needs those players around him to get the best out of him. And he will ultimately have that at Newcastle, and I think he'd be a great signing for Newcastle. Do I think the fee for them is steep? Yes. But are Wolves right to make it a steep fee? Yes. Should Wolves sell Jorgen Strand Larsen? No. Should they even be considering it? Not really. But, as I've said, Larsen's one of these players that doesn't create a hell of a lot for himself. So, in this Wolves side, where ultimately Wolves aren't creating a hell of a lot of chances, if we're being completely honest, the only ones that were created against Manchester City, really, were the Jean-Martin Bellegarde cross, and then a few from Marshall Monetzi, who ultimately was about 25 yards offside. But I do think Jorgen Strand Larsen is one of these players that Wolves cannot afford to get rid of in this window. Now, if Newcastle are still looking for a striker in January, let's say they get to January, they play Anthony Gordon as their number 9 throughout the rest of the season, and they alternate between Barnes, Gordon and Elanga playing in that position, because we have seen Elanga play as a striker as well. Let's say they do that until January. If Wolves are in a comfortable position, do they look at it then? Again, still for me, no. I think if they can get to next summer and Newcastle still need a number 9, which, by the way, very, very unlikely, Wolves should look to sell then. But I'm not sure if his value will be ridiculously high, as I don't see him getting anywhere near that tally this season with a distinct lack of quality in and around him, in my personal opinion. So I do think it's going to be a very, very interesting one for Jorgen Strand Larsen and the Jorgen Strand Larsen to Newcastle saga moving into the final few days of the window. Now, if you did enjoy this video, I'd really appreciate it if you would like the video, share it with your friends, tag me on socials as well. I'm Connor Talks Football on TikTok and Connor122002 on Twitter as well, so you could feel free to reach out to me on there as well if you have anything you'd like to say. And also, I'd very much appreciate it if you would comment on the video, let me know what you think, let me know what you think about the deal as well, whether you think Jorgen Strand Larsen should leave, will leave, or ultimately probably wants to leave. I don't think he probably will, but I don't think he's also going to be one of those players that wouldn't be, excited at the prospect of being Newcastle's number 9. But let me know what you think about the video. Let me know what you think about Larsen. I hope you did enjoy this video. I will be interacting with all the comments as always. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.